start it off, give some remarks. We have other senators and another speaker. Then after that, we will open it up for Q&A. Take it away.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm Senate DFL leader Melisa López Franzen, and I'm joined by assistant DFL leaders and other members of our caucus today because we have unfinished business here at the Capitol, and the Senate DFLers are ready to act. Minnesotans want us to finish the work that we were elected to do and to keep the agreements that both Republicans and Democrats made at the end of the legislative session, to cut taxes by billions of dollars for Minnesota families, to help schools swamped by overwhelming cross-subsidy payments and cost, and to fix our crumbling infrastructure by passing a job-creating bonding bill. Those things aren't happening because the Senate Republicans' majority in the Minnesota legislature have walked away from Minnesotans and from those agreements, and any plan to get them over the finish line in a special session. With the governor and the DFL House leadership ready to finish the job, the Republican majority's obstruction is the only thing standing in the way of action and real progress for Minnesotans. But most importantly for today, we also need to address the special session to finish the public safety bill. Standing with us today are Minnesotans whose lives have been shattered by senseless gun violence and who are here to share their stories to support or push to stop it. As a mother of 2 young children of school age, I've been shaken to the core with the recent massacres in Buffalo, New York, in Uvalde, Texas, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and many more. These incidents have become all too common in Minnesota and across our country. In fact, we've seen more mass shootings in the United States this year, 246 incidents. There have been more days in 2022 than or less days in 2022 than the 246 incidents that we've seen across our country. It's beyond unacceptable, and we simply cannot allow it to continue, not here in Minnesota and not anywhere in our country. Each and every one of these incidents have not only stolen the lives of a child or an adult, but they've also brought unbearable and permanent grief to families and communities. As leaders, we won't sit idly as more lives are lost to gun violence and more grief is imposed on families. DFLers are committed to responding to that grief with action to prevent future tragedies, and we are calling on our colleagues on the Republican side to help us by agreeing to finish the public safety bill and adding common sense gun prevention, gun safety legislation to it. For far too long, the Republican majority in the Senate has obstructed action on gun safety that a strong majority of Minnesotans support, including a majority of gun owners support. It's been a pattern of obstruction that is making gun violence worse and costing more Minnesotans and more American lives. The Republican majority has a simple choice to make: to continue to obstruct efforts to prevent gun violence or to join us in taking action. Minnesotans want leadership, and they are watching us. Now I'd like to call on Senators Ron Latz and Senator Kerry Dietzig, who will outline common sense gun safety legislation and measures that we have been pushing for years and that we want to be included in the public safety bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader López Franzen. I'm Ron Latz, Senator from St. Louis Park. I'm the DFL lead on the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee and a member of the apparently now defunct Public Safety Conference Committee from the most recent session and, frankly, from all of the sessions that have been at least for the last several years. And that's relevant. I'll point that out in a moment. We are renewing our call for the legislature to pass meaningful, common sense gun violence reduction measures. I'm the chief author in the Senate of the bill to expand background checks to close the loopholes at gun shows and private sales where people can purchase firearms without going through the background check to determine if they are legally defined as dangerous and unlawful to carry or possess and purchase firearms. I'm also the chief author of the Red Flag Bill, sometimes referred to as the Gun Violence Protection bill or the extreme risk protection order bill. This has been enacted in 19 states plus the District of Columbia. Many of those states since the Parkland shooting a number of years ago in Florida. And this would enable a judge, based upon evidence of dangerousness, to remove firearms from dangerous, unstable people. We're also supporting, and Senator Dietzick will talk more about this, a bill to increase the age to purchase assault weapons to 21. So this is where we are starting. And the GOP, unfortunately, has blocked our efforts to have a meaningful hearing and a vote on these bills, particularly on the background check and the red flag bill that I've been pushing for many years. We want to have this conversation and have these common sense proposals heard, considered, and receive a vote in the Minnesota Senate. Now, I have tried for many years to get the GOP to hear these bills. I have, in the last couple of years, and many of you will remember this who covered the Judiciary Committee, at the end of many of our hearings, I asked Senator Limmer when we were going to have a hearing on these bills. And he kept saying, well, not yet, that's really not my decision, that's our leadership's decision. And then, of course, we'd go to leadership and they'd say, well, you got to talk to the chair of the committee, that's really his decision to make. So they played hide the ball while people kept getting shot and killed. We couldn't get a hearing. We're just trying to have a conversation with our Senate colleagues about these proposals. The GOP has a history now of not only avoiding those meetings with Senate colleagues, and I'm not the only one in our Senate that have tried to meet with Senator Limmer, but also Senator Limmer has a history of literally evading 15-year-old students who were trying to meet with him back in 2018 to discuss these issues during their day on the Hill. In 2020, at the conference committee, the House came in with both of these bills, the background check and the red flag bill, in their proposal. The Senate GOP-controlled conference committee refused to accept those provisions. They will tell you that they did actually have one hearing. Some of you may have been there, members of the media, or watched it. It was up in Hibbing in northern Minnesota. It was, I would have to say, the least well-run committee hearing I've ever been a part of. The testifiers on our side of the issues were afraid to get up to the testifier table and turn their back on the audience. That was completely out of control. It was a hearing only for testimony. No action was taken. It was ruled at the very beginning it was going to be no action taken. It was just for show. So we traveled all the way to northern Minnesota. We had a hearing for show, and then we left. We need more than just having show hearings and leaving. And what we also know is that the opponents of background check bills and the red flag bill, if they're so concerned about these bills infringing on their rights, then they are exactly the ones that we need to be concerned about. Because the only rights that will be infringed upon are those who are already, under Minnesota statute, prohibited from possessing firearms and from buying firearms. They'd be caught in a background check. There wouldn't be any loopholes left for them to go through. They'd have their firearms removed if a judge determined that there was an emergency and that they were posing an immediate danger to themselves or others around them and that they possessed the firearms. These are enormously popular proposals on a bipartisan basis. The mid-80s in percentage, 84, 85, 86% of all of Minnesotans support both of these bills. That's Metro and non-Metro. That's GOP, Independent, and Democrat. And that is gun owners as well as non-gun owners, including, as was already mentioned, the NRA. A majority of NRA members support both of these bills. So why is it we can't get a hearing and have meaningful action taken by the GOP-controlled legislature? I don't understand it other than that they're unwilling to stand up to a very narrow band of activists that seek to hold them accountable and threaten their own reelection because of that. Well, we need people who are willing to stand up and protect our kids, protect our families from gun violence. Now, we are not going to propose that these are the solutions to gun violence in Minnesota standing alone. Clearly, they're not. They'd be a very important piece of the puzzle. But we need a more comprehensive effort, like as proposed in the combination of the Senate and the House proposals pending before the conference committee, or that were before the conference committee, that we could revive at any moment to pass in a special session. Now, Senator Limmer refused to negotiate in the first week of the conference committee when there were only a little over 2 weeks left in the legislative session. And he repeatedly refused to adopt even consensus provisions that were in both bills or that had agreements of all the stakeholders. He even refused to adopt a Senate-only provision when that was proposed by the House chair. At one conference committee, he arrived alone without his other GOP conferees, declared that the House offer was insufficient, and walked out of the conference committee, leaving those of us who were there and ready to do the business sitting alone without a majority on the Senate side. It appears that the Senate GOP was more interested in declarations than they were in decisions. This my way or the highway approach is with more of an eye toward the November election than on doing the work for the people of Minnesota. Well, I'm sorry, but we were not elected to come to St. Paul and spend months of work just so we could end up with talking points for the November election. We were elected to come down here, do the work, pass legislation, change the laws, fix the laws, strengthen the laws, to make things better for our constituents, for the people of Minnesota, and for the lives of the people of Minnesota. And in this case, in the Public Safety Conference Committee, we cannot afford to wait. The usual summer rise in crime is coming. School's out this week. We need more than platitudes and talking points. We need action. The public didn't send us to the Capitol to stonewall. They sent us here to do our jobs. We stand ready to do our jobs here in the Senate DFL. The GOP needs to come back and finish the job today. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Dietzig, and I represent East Minneapolis. And federal law requires anyone purchasing a handgun to be at least 21, but to purchase a rifle or a shotgun or a semi-automatic weapon, you have to be 18. Minnesota currently does not have separate age limit requirements. So what we plan to do is to introduce a bill to raise the age limit to purchase a rifle or a shotgun, and that includes a semi-automatic military-style assault weapon to the age of 21. We know Minnesota is a hunting and fishing state, so the bill will still allow kids to enjoy hunting. We're not going to change that. We will just end their ability to purchase these military-style weapons, these weapons that were designed for war, that were designed to kill. Maturity and responsibility vary greatly among 18 to 20-year-olds. The brain is still developing. This is recognized in other areas. Those under age 21 can't buy alcohol, they can't rent a car, and they can't buy handguns. So we think those same age restrictions should apply to these semi-automatic war machines. Individuals 18 to 20 comprise only 4% of the population, but they commit 17% of gun homicides. There's actually been a shift from earlier decades to those who commit mass shootings. Since 2018, those that commit these mass murders are more likely to be someone under 21. Raising the age required to purchase these semi-automatic military-style assault weapons will help keep Minnesotans safe. The murderers in Uvalde and Boston had just turned 18 when they went to buy their weapons that again were designed for war. What happened in Uvalde and Boston shook many people to their core. I am hearing from constituents, I am hearing from friends and family members around the state. I'm hearing from mothers that are literally taking their kids to school and crying because they are worried they're not going to be able to pick up their kids, or they're going to get a call saying there's been a shooting at the school. I'm hearing from family members afraid to go to the grocery store, or constituents who are afraid to have their grandma go to the grocery store because they don't know if there's going to be a shooting like that in Boston. We need to act. A Republican legislature, again, a Republican legislature in Florida passed a similar law in 2018. And that law was recently upheld, and the governors and government attorneys argued that 18 to 20-year-olds are uniquely likely to engage in impulsive, emotional, and risky behaviors that offer immediate and short-term rewards. Drawing the line for legal purchase of firearms at 21 is reasonable, and it is a reasonable method of addressing the legislature's public safety concerns. Like Senator Latz said, this bill won't solve all problems, but raising the age to purchase military assault weapons will help. It will help keep Minnesotans safe. This is common sense. Most people agree that we should raise the age limit. This is what Minnesotans want. We are asking the Republicans to join us, so let's pass this common sense gun violence prevention bill, and we should pass it in a special session. Our next speaker is the Executive Director of Protect Minnesota, and her name is Rashmi Senavaratna?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Rashmi Senavaratna. First name is R-A-S-H-M-I. Last name is S-E-N-E-V-I-R-A-T-N-E. I've gotten used to spelling it. I am the Executive Director of Protect Minnesota. We are the only state-based organization that addresses gun violence prevention in Minnesota. And in that light, I just want to take a moment to recenter the conversation about gun violence in Minnesota. It impacts different Minnesota communities across the state. In the Twin Cities, we have children who are killed when they're playing outside on their trampoline. We have children who hear gunshots as they're walking to school or as they are sleeping. I have a coworker whose house was hit with bullets in the middle of the night as I think an accidental. She wasn't the intended person, but her kids now see the bullet holes in their house. And I want to take a moment, and I say this as a mother, how do you parent that? Right? How do you tell your kid that they're safe? How, as a mother, this is something I struggle with when I drop my children off at school. How can I promise them that they're safe? And I can't. And as parents, that is the hardest thing. And I got sidetracked, sorry. In greater Minnesota, we are seeing an increase in firearm suicides. In 2020, 68% of firearm deaths were actually suicides. 53% of those 68 were white males in rural Minnesota. Each suicide impacts 147 people. No matter where you live in Minnesota, this is an issue that impacts you. We have a moral and ethical obligation to our children to create a safer community. As the senators said in their own speeches, this is a multifaceted problem that affects communities differently. So we need different approaches to address this. We need to engage communities and have them help develop these solutions. I encourage gun shop owners and shooting ranges to start talking about suicide, provide resources, provide trigger locks. We have 1,000 trigger locks that we can give out for free. But this has become such a polarized issue that none of this is working or it's happening. We need background checks, and we need to invest in mental health resources that are readily accessible. We need to invest in after-school and summer programs for children and look at enhancing our conceal and carry laws. We can do both, and we need to do both. I say this as a gun owner. The Second Amendment and safety measures are not mutually inclusive. They can exist together. And as we delve into these conversations and politics get involved, I just want to encourage everyone, community members, leaders, just friends and neighbors, we need to prioritize people in this conversation. We need to prioritize children. We need to prioritize our neighbors in rural Minnesota who are struggling with so many mental health issues, and their only solution is suicide. We need to think about those individuals. We need to think about the community, because what we're doing right now is creating another level of trauma for our children. And I say this as a mother and not so much the executive director, but that's not the legacy I want to leave for my kids. I can't imagine that's the legacy any of us want to leave for the next generation. And so I encourage everyone just to have honest conversations and to meet in the middle with the focus that we're protecting our children. Because I want to be able to tell my girls that they're safe, and it breaks my heart that I can't. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that testimony. And just to closing, before we open it up for questions, I want to make one thing very clear, and that we're here today because as Senate DFLers, we are ready to enact common sense safety gun measures that will protect our children, make our neighborhoods safer and daily life safer, and prevent the daily assault weapons from falling into the wrong hands. And we're ready to do it now. It's pragmatic, it's the right thing to do. It doesn't have to be politicized like we do with every single issue as of late. We're trying to save lives. We hope our Republican colleagues in the Senate will stop standing in the way of the majority of Minnesotans want, which is joining us to take swift action on this and other unfinished business this legislative session. But if they won't and they refuse to lead on this or any of the other issues the residents of our state say they want, then we will do everything in our power to make sure there are new faces and new voices in the Minnesota Senate January 2023. Who will? Thank you.
All right, folks, we have time for a few questions.
Can I have the minority leader? Why don't we see every day in the mail, in Republican districts or where Republicans are incumbents, a piece of mail that says, this person opposed these bills? I don't see that kind of campaign on the part of DFLers as much as the polling numbers and your ending comment there suggests. Why don't you run campaigns that way?
That's an excellent question, and you will. That is something that is in the forefront of every conversation as of late. You turn on the radio, even today, my young son of 6 years old heard guns, and that is what we're hearing every day. That is what Minnesotans are living through, and we will remind them who's on their side to prevent that from happening, to stop that violence across our communities, across our state, across our nation. We owe it to them. We live it every day, and you will see more of those conversations happening. So we've done it in the past. I think it's now more relevant than ever. We went through Sandy Hook, and now we're going through Uvalde, and if no one's been touched by this, who at this moment in time, we can't ignore it. We want to, because it's so dreadful and terrible to know that you can't even identify the bodies of young children and you do nothing to stop it, then you shouldn't be representing our voices.
Several of the speakers talked about the polarization of issues, including this one. What is the realistic chance that the Senate GOP will go for these three proposals? And if they won't, can you find any common ground with them?
Well, if you look at the details of the bills, you'll find that they are not as originally introduced, and they are not as originally proposed in a lot of places. They are products of conversations I had over a long period of time, and my colleagues in the House and stakeholders had with Republicans as well as Democrats, and gun owners and gun rights advocates, Second Amendment advocates. And they take into consideration some of the concerns that they have raised. So they're ready to go in terms of bipartisanship, and I would say they're certainly ready to go in terms of what the public is willing to do and wants done. Why won't the GOP step forward? And how do we make that happen? I don't know. I mean, they spent, from this podium and from every other platform that they had, they spent all spring, actually they spent the better part of the last 2 years complaining about how bad gun violence is and how important it is that we step forward and we crack down on crime and we take these important steps to make the public safer. In fact, we had a press conference here, some of us did, when I introduced the bill and went over to the conference committee, and I got criticized for having a press conference when we introduced the bill, when a couple days earlier, the chair of our committee had a press conference to announce that he was coming over to the conference committee to push on a bill. So they have been trying to beat us up for years on how important it is to pass these important public safety measures. And when the time comes to actually do it, they walked away from the table. They refused, and they're still refusing to come back to the table now. So how do we get them to do it? I don't know. I wish I knew the answer. I wish they would hear from their own constituents. I mean, the actual voters in their districts on this issue that would call them and say, you know what, I like you on this, I like you on that, but you need to be here on reducing gun violence. You need to pass background checks. You need to pass red flag laws. You ought to raise the age to buy assault weapons in the United States. You certainly can do it in Minnesota. I mean, you got to be 21 to buy cigarettes too, right? But you can buy an assault weapon that will literally, you know, a small entrance hole and then a massive exit wound. They're designed to obliterate human flesh. Can you imagine what that does to a 6-year-old when they're designed to kill adults on the battlefield? So how do we convince them that now is the time to do it? This is part of our effort, is to let them know how important this is to us, how important we think it is to the people of Minnesota, including their own constituents. Because I've seen the polling numbers, and it's district by district. It's metro, it's suburban, it's rural Minnesota, it's suicide prevention, as well as other firearm violence prevention. They'd actually be popular within their districts for passing this stuff. So maybe that's the way, maybe that's the key.
Do you have specific examples of clauses that have been changed based on those bipartisan conversations you've had with the GOP?
Oh, I don't know if I want to go into some of those specifics, honestly, because, you know, I had conversations with a lot of people, and not all of them probably want to be on record as having had conversations with me about some of those proposals. You know, I would say maybe one I will identify has to do with the red flag proposal, where the original bill, and there's still a lot of advocates support doing this, would allow family members to bring a petition in court, in addition to law enforcement and medical professionals or mental health professionals. I got a fair amount of pushback from gun rights advocates that were concerned that some family members might file frivolous court petitions because they are angry at the person that they are targeting with their petition. And they thought it'd be more appropriate to have a buffer, if you will. So if they were to talk to law enforcement first, law enforcement could do a little bit of screening in that regard, or talk to a medical professional, a caregiver, something like that. We should keep in mind, though, the judges are the ultimate buffers, and they're intended to be that way. For example, in Connecticut, these are the numbers, and in Maryland, in the first month where Maryland enacted their red flag law, they had like over 100 petitions or so, and in about 50% of them, the judge denied the petition, which tells you, number one, in 50% of them, the judge concluded after a review of all the evidence that a person who had access to firearms was dangerously unstable and posed a threat to him or herself or to other people around that person. But it also tells you that the judges are doing their job of reviewing the petitions and analyzing the allegations and determining whether or not it meets the legal threshold. So I think we can have a lot of confidence in the courts to go through that process. But for those who don't have so much trust in our judges, and unfortunately they've been beat up a lot in this last spring as well, by the people who do trust law enforcement, I trust law enforcement to do a pretty good job of screening those petitions as well, or those concerns, and to bring those petitions where they think it's appropriate. So that's one example I'll give you, but it's a product of conversations across the aisle with a lot of GOP senators as well as DFL senators.
Folks, we have time for Couple more.
For Senator Latz, or I'm sorry, were you about to speak?
Well, no, I was just going to mention that for those that I am hearing from, that I am encouraging them, if they're not from my district, to contact their senators, because I think that is how that we get bipartisan agreement on this, is they have to hear from their constituents. So I am encouraging people to do that. And I also just want to clarify that because Minnesota is a hunting state, and I understand that, I have family and friends that hunt, we're not limiting, those under 20 ability to get that gun to hunt, but we are limiting their ability to buy those assault-style weapons that were designed for war. So clarify that. And then, yep.
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Yep.
Your provision would ban essentially all purchases of any guns by anyone under 21. That's what the law would be if yours were enacted, is that right?
So that's the way it is, but I'm having conversations. So right now, federal law prohibits under 21 you can't buy a handgun. And so right now, we're just kind of matching that with the assault guns, which includes the rifles and long guns. But again, in reaching out and having conversations with law enforcement and with hunting organizations, that may change because we are such a hunting state and people enjoy that. Then I don't want to limit that, but I don't think like the 18-year-old in Uvalde in Boston should be able to buy that assault, they're called Samsung, so semi-automatic weapons, assault-style weapons. They shouldn't be allowed to buy those, in my opinion.
Focus not on possession, not on going out in the field and hunting,
Just
but
on
on just
buying.
simply purchasing.
Yep.
When was the last time that was proposed up here at the Capitol, if it has been? I can't recall.
So I've researched the bill and drafted it, but I don't believe that it's been up there, at least when I was on judiciary. In the last few years, it hasn't. We usually, in consultation with our caucus members and with advocacy groups, kind of decided to focus on the two bills that Senator Latz had. But there are other bills also that are out there that I've researched and that others have researched. Some of them we've dropped, some of them we kind of haven't, just to keep the focus on the background check bill and the extreme risk protection orders. So this one we're hearing, though, from people across the state, as those questions were raised after the most recent shootings. People are wondering, why are they allowed to buy those? So I think this is a common sense bill.
And it would grandfather in previously purchased. In other words, somebody who's 18 today, they purchase it.
Are you hopeful that traction around similar proposals in other states could help you in this context?
Yep. I think a lot of people around the country are asking those questions. Why are 18-year-olds, when you can't buy alcohol and you can't rent a car, why should you be able to buy these assault-style weapons?
I have one more thing, just quickly, because using the other side's words, if you go to the Gun Owners Caucus, on their website, they have stop all gun control as one of their priorities, and that means all. We'll never compromise on your Second Amendment rights. Our organization is opposed to all legislation and actions that infringe upon the rights of law-abiding gun owners. Our Second Amendment Sanctuary Counties program helps citizens draw a hard line against gun control efforts across the state. No right is absolute in this case, especially when it comes to the life of law-abiding citizens who want to live in peace and free from violence, especially when it comes to our schools. So we have this stance against us. When are we going to find some compromise to actually do what's right, what's sensible, what's pragmatic, what the majority of Minnesotans and Americans want, which is to live in peace and free of violence? It is time for us to take a step. This position that I just read is an extreme position on an issue when there's plenty of room to work on sensible laws that protect all of us. So I appreciate your time indulging us in this important topic, but this is a time for action and it's not a time for hiding. And again, our Republican colleagues are more interested in banning books in schools than banning guns in schools, because what they're proposing is to harden schools, to protect, maybe open more spaces for kids to hide. That is not a solution to violence. And when people talk about mental health, which is an important issue as well, mental health alone does not kill people. Guns do. And we are trying to do what's right for our communities, especially for our young kids that are living right now in terror and violence. So thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, everybody.
Melissa? Melissa?